Hi guys, I'm Mike and this is F1 Fanatics, and this is our live race reaction to the race that has just happened in Japan. And as you can see, obviously hair's a bit everywhere. It's been a bit of an all-nighter really, this race. So yeah, was it worth getting up for? Well, I don't know. It's Valtteri Bottas. He secured his first win since, I believe it was Azerbaijan this year. So it's fantastic on him, and he really yeah, he really drove a solid race from start to finish. As soon as Sebastian Vettel jumped start and allowed him to get into the lead, he never really looked back from that position, actually. So, yeah, it was a really fantastic race from Valtteri Bottas. Impressive from Sebastian Vettel from there on in. And Lewis Hamilton drove a race that I really thought that he should have just been on the one-stop strategy. It was really confusing to me that Mercedes decided to pit him again because his tyre wear seemed good because he'd pit so late. You'd seen from some of the midfield runners that obviously you could extend the stint quite a lot. It wasn't necessarily too heavy on the tyre degradation. And yeah, it seemed a very confusing one that they sacrificed the 1-2. But at the end of the day, Valtteri Bottas has won, and it meant that Mercedes have secured another constructors title, which obviously is the big and main one for them. So yeah, what we will do, guys, is we will go through from kind of the back of the grid all the way up to P1, and then if you are in the comments, we will do a little bit of Q&A later on as well, although I'll try and answer if you pop up a question as we go along as well. So Katie's going, what are my thoughts on the Albon Norris incident? I thought Albon was a little bit naughty there. I think he pushed him on. I was surprised to see it go down as a racing incident, but it seems like the stewards are adopting the approach of they're just going to let everything go and hard racing is okay. So as long as they're consistent on it, then I think it's fine. I definitely kind of probably expect a penalty for Gasly later on for what he did on Sergio Perez, forcing him out of the race late on. But yeah, guys, we will go now from the back to the top of the grid. So we have Verstappen was the first one to retire, and very unlucky here. It's going to be interesting to hear your thoughts in the comments on this one. I was surprised that it wasn't given a penalty straight off because there's fighting with your elbows out, but I did think he gave Verstappen absolutely no room and kind of forced him. Stephen saying it's got to be a penalty. Guys, if you are in the comments below, Ashley and Stephen from the channel are there, so they'll be communicating with you guys in there as well. So yeah, for me, obviously it ruined Verstappen's race, meant that he had to retire, and yeah, it was initially investigated and given as a racing incident, but then now what they are going to do is they're going to investigate it after the race, which kind of seems a little bit pointless for me. But Leclerc had a really strange race. We'll kind of get onto Leclerc later on. But 19th, we had Robert Kubica. I mean, it was a miracle that he managed to actually get out after his crash earlier on in the day in qualifying, where he binned it straight at the start of Q1. So he was a massive kind of distance off the lead there. Russell then came 18th. Williams, really, you can't really talk much about in their race. They just weren't competitive. It's all about, can they get competitive again in 2020? This season is all about seeing, can they get those developments for 2020 right? Yeah, because I don't think they're going to score another point this season. Kevin Magnussen came 17th. He obviously also had a crash in qualifying in Q1. The wind was really strong in qualifying and obviously led to the incidents by Robert Kubica and Kevin Magnussen crashing out. So, yeah, I think he probably had some damage that the car wasn't quite right and certainly wasn't able to get the setup right. So a bit of a difficult race for him. Had a fantastic start going up the grids, but then the Haas just kind of slowly off. And as usual with Haas, Roman Grosjean did fantastic to get into Q3, but they just drifted and they were nothing on a Sunday. So, yeah, it was really difficult on that front. Giovinazzi and Raikkonen, both the Alphas, are kind of dropped off the pace. Giovinazzi was 16th, Grosjean was 15th, and Raikkonen was 14th. So, yeah, those constructors, they're at the bottom. those are the bottom three constructors, and Alpha are kind of out of touch of Racing Point, really. So their season's essentially over as well. So their focus is probably on development for the 2020 season. So I'm not surprised to see those teams starting to drift towards the back of the grid, other than obviously Haas and Williams have struggled all season. 13th, we had Lando Norris, and his race was kind of sabotaged. Obviously, Katie brought it up in the comments there by the Alexander Albon incident. And yeah, really difficult because Norris was obviously having a great race. I'll have to confirm it was very close at the start. I think it was within the first 10 laps that the incident occurred. But yeah, Lando Norris, very frustrating because McLaren had a very strong car, and when we get onto Carlos Sainz, you're going to see how good a performance it was. But yeah, Lando Norris, his race was unfortunate from there. 12, Daniel Kvyat struggled all weekend really, and compared to his teammate Pierre Gasly, who got it right, a Honda Power car, they were hoping that they were going to go well this weekend, and they haven't. And yeah, they all struggled. They've shown that the Honda Power unit just isn't up to pace, and yeah, was a bit of a nothing race for Daniel Kvyat. Lance Stroll finished in P11, just outside the points. He was running for a long time within the points, and I think just kind of dropped off there. But this was one of the cars involved within kind of a midfield battle that wasn't really covered by Sky at all, because obviously Perez started in 17th. Danny Rick 16th, Hulkenberg 15th, and Lance Stroll was 12th. But then by lap 2 or 3, I think they were like 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th in there, and having a really good midfield battle. But everything was focused on the front. They didn't get anything. I think I was sitting there watching it with Stephen, and I think only Giovinazzi got. Hey Mike, what a race and amazing defense by Vettel and attack by Ricciardo. Yeah, it was a fantastic race. Just we'll come on to Ricciardo in a second, but yeah, Ricciardo was fantastic drive from P16 to get into the points finish today and finish above his teammate Nico Hulkenberg, and Vettel was a superb defense considering. But yeah, like I said at the start of the video, I was really confused by that two-stop strategy in regards to Hamilton. P10, so we're getting into the points now, and that was Nico Hulkenberg. And yeah, interesting one. He struggled obviously in qualifying, had a hydraulics issue in qualifying, so I'm not entirely sure whether that then had an influence in the race. But yeah, he was involved in that midfield battle that looks really good, and I'm sure in classic Formula One fashion, we'll get clips on it on the YouTube channel and on their social media channels later on in the week. But actually, live action within the race, we didn't get to see anything. So yeah, a strong points finish for Renault, which actually, no, I don't think. Ashley will probably be able to work out the points better than me. I was going to say I think Renault would have closed the gap to McLaren with Norris finishing outside the points, but because Carlos Sainz finished in P5, it probably isn't. But yes, Sergio Perez is down here classified as P9, being crashed out at the end there, but that can't be right on the official Formula One there. Well, maybe it is. It is on the official Formula One there, so maybe his crash at the end, because it did happen on the last lap. He has been classified as P9. So it was a fantastic race by Sergio Perez, and obviously was fighting and getting the overtake on Gasly, and he was past Gasly, and then obviously Gasly clipped his back wheel and sent him into the wall. So yeah, that was not great for Sergio Perez and then there. But that'd be fantastic for him if he gets classified as P9, because he did drive a really good race. Pierre Gasly in 8 was the best of the Honda performers all race weekend. He was fantastic in qualifying, getting P9 in qualifying, and was really solid throughout. He definitely looked the best of the performers. And in the race, he drove a very good, I think he was in the points throughout the entire race. And yes, certainly the best performance out of the Honda-powered cars this weekend. Danny Rick, just obviously talking out, I think that is Mark from Beyond the Grandstand in the chat bringing that up, because typical bringing up some Daniel Ricciardo, making sure he gets the recognition he deserves. But yeah, 7th. So it's not correct. Thank you. Thank you, Mark, for clearing that up. So that's all right. So yeah, Sergio Perez unfortunately doesn't get that points finish, and it would have been another points finish for him to kind of round off a really successful second half of the season for him. And the only time he's been out is an engine failure in Singapore, and obviously today where Pierre Gasly crashed him out. But yeah, Daniel Ricciardo starting in P16 had a terrible qualifying, never really got it together. But in the race on a Sunday, Daniel Ricciardo loves overtaking, and I can't wait to see the highlights of him working his way through the midfield, because that is an absolutely fantastic performance for him. I think at one stage he was, even with how things were going with pit stops, running in P4. He had a really deep first stint where he went in and then made sure that he had really fresh, soft tyres at the end, which allowed him to obviously maintain that fantastic position. Not quite best of the rest, because that was maintained by the McLaren man, Carlos Sainz. But in P6 was Charles Leclerc. And ever since he had that damage to his front wing with his collision with Max Verstappen at the start, kind of ruined his race. And he had a really weird race. I think someone will be able to clear this up for me. I think it was like 3 pit stops in the end, because he had a 2-stop strategy, and then he then pitted again at the end, trying to get the fastest lap to stop Mercedes clinching the constructors title this weekend, but he was unable to do that. So yeah, P6 for Leclerc, and yeah, really weird race. And yeah, I would really expect him to get some form of punishment, or at least some reprimand after that incident with Verstappen, because it was just careless on lap 1. It was unnecessary. If it was fighting later on in the race and it was just 2 cars on the track, it'd be all right. But it was going into turn 1, and it was, yeah, I thought that was a really bad move by Charles Leclerc on that day, actually. And P5, Carlos Sainz, and for me, and looks like it in the comments as well, is no, actually, I won't give him driver of the day. Ashley is giving Carlos Sainz driver of the day. I think, yeah, P5 was an absolutely fantastic drive for him, and he is Mr. Consistent in the midfield, and he has been the best performer in the midfield all season. And yeah, really incredible drive for him as well, and getting ahead of Charles Leclerc, obviously with Charles Leclerc pitting as well. Yeah, fantastic performance. For Alexander Albon, obviously good for him, but I think that is mainly influenced by retirements. The Red Bull just weren't really at it, and so he kind of did what was expected, but didn't really perform beyond. And like I said, having that incident with Lando Norris, I didn't necessarily think it was great. P3, now we get onto the podium, and that is Lewis Hamilton. And like I said, this is a big talking and a frustration point for me. I was watching the race. It may come out later, but obviously Sky Sports were promoting one of their big new graphics that they had on screen that was managing the tyre wear. And at the point that Lewis Hamilton pitted for his fresh set of tyres, fresh set of soft tyres, he was in the greens on his medium. And because he had extended his first stint so long, you just thought that he would be able to go to the end of the race on that medium compound. But for whatever reason, Mercedes decided to pit him again. And it meant that it went from being a Mercedes 1-2, which it probably should have been, to him not being able to pass Vettel on the last lap. Very good defending from Vettel, actually. And yeah, no, was a very solid race there. But Hamilton had a really good drive. It was just, yeah, very confusing. It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts in the comments, what you thought on that instant. Sebastian Vettel, P2, after that frustrating jump start that he did, I'm going to say I'm surprised he didn't get a penalty. Kimi Raikkonen did exactly the same thing in Sochi. Vettel, I know he started a little bit further back, I think Paul di Resta was saying on commentary, but it was still a jump start. And if Kimi Raikkonen got penalised, because he pretty much stopped, and he probably stopped even more than what Vettel did on that, didn't get away with it. The kind of cynic in me kind of says that the only reason that they didn't give Sebastian Vettel a penalty is because they thought it would then be a boring Mercedes 1-2 race, because Red Bull were going to be nowhere near. Charles Leclerc was out of the picture. So obviously they wanted to have some sort of competitiveness, and keeping Vettel there It was oh, sorry, correction from Mark. It is Perez does keep his 9th place. He was classified, so that is another points finished by Sergio Perez. So that's fantastic. Cheers for Mark noticing that in comments. And then rounding off, we'll bring it into Valtteri Bottas. And I think, yeah, although surprised by Hamilton pitting again, Valtteri Bottas drove an absolutely fantastic race from start to finish. He'd been fantastic all the way through the weekend. The only one he hadn't really performed in was qualifying, but he still beat Hamilton in qualifying. He'd got the better of his teammate all weekend here in Suzuka. And yeah, he deserved it. First race win since Azerbaijan, and it is a matter of time before Vettel wins, but it does just about keep it alive going in. And I believe by him winning today and Lewis Hamilton finishing 3rd, it means that Lewis Hamilton can't secure the title in Mexico. So yeah, it's good just for that it extends a little bit longer. And yeah, Lewis Hamilton will then probably secure the title in the US Grand Prix. But guys, that is the roundup of the race. I'll now probably talk in the comments with you guys if you have questions and stuff of incidents within the race. So guys, get involved. Stephen saying not much did make sense in this race. I think it was a little deflated, waking up early in the morning, and there were just some very confusing incidents by the stewards in there. But yeah, guys, floor is open in the live chat. Questions and we will answer. See that. Okay. You think Perez kept his lap because they were a lap down? Okay. Not sure on that one. That was Ash clearing up there. Also, yeah, it was disappointing to see Albon not get that overtake on Sainz without the pit stop. But I just think it was a solid race. He's doing just about enough, but it's really interesting because Pierre Gasly, ever since he got into that Toro Rosso, especially today, highlights it. I mean, the last 2 races have been his best 2 races of the season. But yeah, it's really it's a really tough choice because obviously Pierre Gasly looks like he's performing better, and he's consistently beaten Daniel Kvyat, which is something that Alexander Albon wasn't doing in the Toro Rosso. But the driving styles of the 2 cars, obviously the Red Bull suits Alex Albon a lot better, so he's getting better race performances than what Pierre Gasly is. And Pierre Gasly is better suited to the Toro Rosso and obviously a year more experienced, so he's getting better results in there. McLaren also extend their gap to Renault. Sainz scores 10 points while Daniel scores 6, Hulkenborg scores 1. Okay, so yeah, pretty much for me that extends it. That's 3 points extended, so that extends McLaren's lead in the constructors to 36 points. Obviously it is maintainable if McLaren gets some DNFs and Renault have some strong points finishes between now and the end of the season, but I think it's very unlikely that they're going to do that. Katie asks, in your opinion, has Alex done enough so far to get the Red Bull seat next year? For me, yes, I think he has. I think he's been very solid. Yeah, I'm mixed on this one because he hasn't done anything exceptional. He's obviously driven from the back of the grid. Last race out in Sochi, obviously having a poor qualifying and coming back there, that was really good. But he's doing what's expected of him. But I think that's kind of all that Red Bull want. And because Max Verstappen's the main man, Max Verstappen's the guy the team's built around. Alex Albon has a similar driving style to Alex Albon. He's getting the best out of the car and best performances out of the car that is warranted. So yeah, that's all he needs to do. And Pierre Gasly, maybe he's going to be at Toro Rosso, maybe needs another year of developing so he can learn how to adapt to different driving styles a little bit more. And maybe in 2021, he might come back into the seat there. But I think Alex Albon probably will be given a look in for the 2020 seat. Ashley's opinion of it is Albon is getting what is expected of him in the seat, and through an unlucky Max, he's actually ahead of the head-to-head. Yeah, because Max Verstappen, since obviously self-inflicted at Spa, but other incidents have not been Max Verstappen's fault, and especially today was really unlucky to be, heavily inflicted by Charles Leclerc. Any other questions in the comments? I'll leave it for a few seconds. And if there is no further comments, then guys, you can obviously comment on this video if you're not watching it live, and let us know your thoughts on the race and your questions in it. And we'll be obviously involved in the comments thing. We always like interacting with you guys on here. But yeah, it looks like on the live chat that there is no further questions, to be fair. No, just Mark giving his opinion on it. So Mark from Beyond the Grandstand says, Albon is exactly what Red Bull want. He's a reliable points finisher and doesn't challenge Max. I think so. I think he's their equivalent to what Mercedes have in Valtteri Bottas. And Albon could potentially in the future develop into a stronger and better driver. But right now, Alexander Albon and how he drives that car is fantastic, and what they need to kind of keep progressing in the constructors. Now all they need to do is make sure that Honda power unit can compete with the Ferraris and Mercedes, and that they can start challenging for race wins again, because they've had a really disappointing. I know when me and Ashley made our podium predictions for the second half of the season, we did think Max Verstappen was going to get on the podium a lot and have a really good second half of the season, but it's actually turned out that Ferrari have streaked ahead of Red Bull, and Red Bull are kind of in a bit of no man's land at the moment. But guys, I think that is it. I think that's rounds up in the comments. That is our live reaction to the race. Oh, I've jumped the gun. It's too soon. Stephen has jumped in. Was the Lewis pit stop team orders or tactical? By looking at his tyre wear and knowing how good that Merc is on tyres, it had to be team orders. Surely. It had to be team orders so that Valtteri Bottas secured the win, because he extended the first stint. It reminded me a little bit of Lewis and Bottas at Silverstone, where obviously Lewis did exactly the same thing, extended his first stint, which then allowed him to go on to a one-stop strategy, which allowed him to win the race at Silverstone. So today it seemed like Mercedes were there, because it's the only reason why I can see why they would sacrifice a 1-2, because it was confusing. I know they had 10 laps to go and put Hamilton on quicker tyres with Vettel on worn tyres, but Vettel had done a two-stop strategy, so his mediums weren't that worn. So it was a really, like I say, confusing decision by Mercedes. Not really sure. Stewards on Vettel jump start. While the video shows some movement from Vettel's car, that movement was within the acceptable tolerance of the F1 jump start system. Okay, well, that's fair enough. I presume I can't compare the incidents side by side. To me, it looked a mirror image of what Kimi had done 2 weeks ago in Sochi, but clearly Kimi had gone a little bit further and beyond the acceptable tolerance of F1 jump start system. For me, I'm still a little bit skeptical of it. I think they avoided giving a penalty because they wanted to see a race at the start, and it's good for TV coverage, because otherwise it would have just been a formation between Bottas and Lewis Hamilton. Okay, he didn't pass the line and trip the sensor, and Kimi 100% did pass the line in Sochi. So that's probably the difference between the two. All right, so that's fair. Maybe it was a little bit harsh on there, but anyway, that put Sebastian Vettel behind Valtteri Bottas and pretty much sabotaged the race from then on in. Any more in the comments, guys? What did we think of the race? Were there any other incidents that you're thinking? Do we think Gasly deserves a penalty for what he did on Sergio Perez at the end? Do you think he allowed him enough room? You heard my thoughts on the Norris and Albon incident. What were your guys' thoughts? I suppose, I'll throw that back to you, Katie. What was your thoughts on the Albon there? Yeah, I think that's certainly a good point to raise, Ash. That it shows that given the tyres, cars can follow and overtake, because tyre degradation wasn't really an issue here. Well, I know they went on to kind of two-stop incidents, two-stop strategies, which was good because it added more variety into the field than usual and allowed that kind of extended first stint. And we did see different strategies performed, which is what we want to see because, yeah, it adds up to a more mixed-up race. And yeah, the Hamilton one was the only one that I'd say was confusing, but Danny Rick was absolutely fantastic in terms of his one-stop strategy today. I think Mark says, I think it's a racing incident between Charles and Max. Same for Gasly and Perez. Okay, interesting, Mark. Do you want to expand on those thoughts at all in the comments? Yeah, you do. Going around the outside is always a risk, but I think on lap one, there's a little bit more argument for allowing space. And obviously, Leclerc still would have had the better traction out of the corner. It was a very forceful. I think it was more the fact that obviously friction between Max Verstappen and Leclerc ever since Austria happened. And yeah, I think they're always going to be pushing themselves to the boundary. If it was the other way round, would Max have done it to Charles Leclerc? I think probably yeah. So maybe he can't be too happy because if you're willing to do it yourself, you can't really be too annoyed at the other guy for doing it. For me, the Gasly one, I just think he didn't allow. Perez was past him, so he should have eased off a little bit more. It wasn't like they were side by side. The Verstappen and Leclerc one, they were more side by side. But for me, Perez had made the move. He'd got past, obviously, with the contact being on his back tyre. That's why I think, yeah, it was a little bit. Gasly should have eased off more. And I think maybe he might incur a little bit of a penalty from that. But I don't believe it was under investigation. So, yeah, probably just a racing incident. Okay, Dad. Sorry. For me, it looked like from just watching it live, it looked like he just drifted out wide and didn't get much understeer there. If it was understeer one, then that's just something that naturally happens going into the corner and everyone's there. Then that would just be a racing incident. So thanks for pointing that one out, Mark. And right, any other instance you want to talk about in the race, guys? I think that is probably then rounded up in the comments and in the race. Thanks for guys getting involved in the comments as always. Thanks. We do appreciate your support on the channel and it makes it interesting talking about the race afterwards as well. For me, how I'd rate the race, I thought it was a good race, but there wasn't really much action. And I think a lot of the action that might have happened within the race kind of got ruined within that first lap incident between Leclerc and Max Verstappen, because obviously it took a load of it took two of the main contenders out of the race and allowed Mercedes to kind of dictate their strategy to secure the win. And yeah, it would have been interesting to see if Charles Leclerc was able to keep Lewis Hamilton behind for longer. Would Lewis Hamilton have got on to the podium? But yeah, guys, thanks for joining us for this live reaction. If you are watching this not live, please, yeah, do get involved in the comments. We're always happy to kind of chat and interact with you fans and let us know your thoughts on the race. And Ashley, me and Ashley are actually going away to Vegas, but Ashley goes away tomorrow and I'm going away on Wednesday. So that means the Race Review podcast will have stepping guests of Mark from Beyond the Grandstand, who obviously we had a video of Beyond the Bingo on tour that came out on Friday. So make sure you go and check that video out. So yeah, we'll have a more in-depth discussion on all the incidents tomorrow there. But guys, thanks for watching. And as always, UF1 fans, keep racing.